Welcome to Stern Effects. I'm Eran Stern, and this time we'll talk about rotoscoping, masking, dust, explosions, and compositing inside After Effects. So in this tutorial, I'll break down the clip that you saw at the beginning. This is a remake of a thing that I created for the 30 seconds challenge at the Editors Retreat conference back in 2014. Now I decided to return to it again and reproduce it in 4K. Why? First, because I just love the idea. And second, because I hope you will find my workflow useful if you wish to create something similar in After Effects. So this is not going to be a step-by-step tutorial, but more of a breakdown of this project. Still, I invite you to stick around because I hope you will learn invaluable tricks and techniques from masking, clean plate preparation, tracking, compositing, and even sound design inside After Effects. Okay, so let's get started. So here we are inside After Effects and we have few layers, actually 17, but there are more hidden away from us. I'm going to expose them in a later stage. Those are the sound or audio effects layers. For now, I'll start with the original clip. I named it original, of course, but when I shot it with my iPhone, if I'll click on the words layer name, this is the name the iPhone gave to it. Very, very memorable name. I'm just telling it to you because naming your stuff is very important. So before starting, I'm going to maximize the composition panel and I'll play you the untreated clip, which was taken again using my iPhone 13 Pro on a freezing day in North London. So you already know where we are going to take it. The idea here is that because there's no one around, the traffic light is getting depressed and it decides to lift off, to take off and fly into space. Now, obviously you already saw the joke, so it's not funny anymore, but this is why I'm doing it. I'm articulating the script in front of you and saying the basic plan so we'll know where we are heading. Now, this is very important because the first stage here is to separate the elements. So I found out that in this case, frame 450, the frame that you are seeing right now, is probably going to be the best frame to create a clean background as well as to separate the traffic light from its background. Now, I tried first to use the automatic tools, but they failed, they didn't work. And I guess this is because there isn't enough information behind the obscuring object here to fill in the details for the roof as well as for the green plants. But just to show you how to approach it in case you have a different shot, and also to point out the best way to send a still frame from After Effects to Photoshop, I'm going to go to Window and then make sure that Content Aware Fill is available. Or actually, it is available, but it is on screen. And over here, you can try to mask the object yourself, but I'm here to tell you it's not going to work. So we might as well help After Effects by creating a reference frame that After Effects can use to fill in the missing details. Again, I'm here to tell you that this wasn't a successful venture for me, but I want to show you how to achieve that. So I'm going to click on Create Reference Frame. This is going to switch to Photoshop and send this frame, and now we can start working with it. Notice the name is Reference Layer, and it's also, if I'm going to switch back to After Effects just momentarily, I want to show you that above all layers, there is one frame here called Reference Frame, and the Content Aware Fill is going to use it if we are going to mask away the details and click on Generate Fill Layer. So it is a two-step process. First, you need to cut a hole here inside After Effects to the object that you want to remove, and then you can use the reference frame that you're going to build inside Photoshop to help the tool create a nicer, if not more accurate fill according to what you are going to create in Photoshop. So quickly, back in Photoshop, I'm armed, by the way, with the object selection tool, which can identify objects. I can click on the traffic lights, hold down shift and add to the mixed other stuff. Or I can just marquee around the object that I like Photoshop to include. And with any luck, it's going to understand what I'm after and help me to separate it. As you can see, we need to help Photoshop over here. We need to take away some of the areas by Option or Alt clicking and then removing those unnecessary, unwanted parts. And then, of course, do the opposite for the things that it didn't include. I just want to show you why this didn't work for me. I might as well also try to include this part. And then I'll go to the Select menu. And under Modify, I'm going to grow my selection by choosing Expand. And let's go with a value of 5 in this case. Doesn't really matter, just for the sake of demonstration. I'm going to go to Edit now and ask Photoshop to fill in the details by using Content Aware Fill over here, which is arguably a better technology. But you can see that it doesn't really do a good job. Now, I can tell the tool what I like it to include or exclude by, for example, removing parts of the sky, let's say over here, or maybe just part of the fence, and see if I'm getting a better result. And you can see that this is not the case here. So this is why I haven't used this approach. I'll cancel out, I'll close this frame, I'll return back to After Effects, and I'm actually going to undo the last thing that I did. So I'm not going to use this reference frame. Instead, I'll select the frame that I created manually, and then I'll go to Edit and choose Edit Original first to show it to you here in Photoshop. I'll switch back to the rectangle tool so we won't get this distracting selection or auto selection. And you can see that the roof is not perfect, although you may or may not notice. And I've managed to do a better work using the old school clone stamp tools as well as few tools from this menu. So I've used the patch tool, the content aware move tool, as well as the healing brush. I worked on this, I guess 10 minutes or so, and finally came up with a result that I thought was good enough for what I needed. So let's return back to After Effects. And before I will enable the clip here, I just want to show you that this is a handheld shot. And I want to preserve the motion and apply it to the clean plate. So the way to do it is to select the original, and then I'll go to the tracker panel and I'll click on track motion. I'm going to do it again with you. I deleted the original one just to show you what you need to do in those cases. I'm going to zoom in to the shot by pressing the greater 2 or the period in the keyboard. And then I'll enable the position and scale. Maybe zoom in even further so I can see both trackers. I'll take tracker number 2, make sure that I'm waiting for the double-headed arrow because I want to move all 3 ingredients of the tracker to, let's say, this point on the screen. And then I'll do the same for tracker number 1. So just find 2 contrast places. And then notice that I moved my cursor back in time so I can capture the motion before I need to apply it to my background. All I need to do now is ask After Effects to analyze the motion. And it will not only track the position, but it will also calculate the scale and the rotation. I'm not going to wait for this process to finish. I just want you to see this is what we need to collect. This is the data. And then we need to apply the data to a null object and use this null object and apply its data to all the other things that we want to include in this composition. One of them, of course, is the background, but we're going to use it for all the dust elements as well as the other stuff that we're going to bring in. So you need to create a null object and then click on Edit Target and attach the motion or apply the motion to this null object. I already created this ahead of time. My null object is named Tracking Data, and this is this guy over here, layer 15. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'll close the tracker. I'll close the layer viewer. I'll return back to the composition. And then I'll enable the tracking data. This is the null I've created ahead of time. And you can see it is tracked to the same place. And now what we can do is enable also the clean plate. And you can see that it is parented to the tracking data. So this means that it is now going to move with the same motion that I've used to create this clip. So this is how I created the clean plate. And you can see that it's not perfect because it is moving this shot. It's exposing underneath the edges of the original. So we'll need to zoom in, and I'll do it in a later stage after pre-comping everything and preparing it for delivery. But for the most part, I now have a clean plate. Also notice that the clean plate is fading in. So the traffic light is disappearing, and then we are seeing basically nothing. All right, so this leads us to recreating the other elements. So the scene is going to look as real as possible. The first thing that I recreated is the cars. Remember, there were 3 cars over here. I'm just going to switch off the visibility to remind you this is the first one, this is the second, this is the third. And I thought it is important to keep them just to show everyone that things are going to be back to normal as quickly as possible after the traffic light has left the screen here. So we are basically rotoscoping back the car 1, car 2, and car 3. I'm just going to enable them and show you that for this task, I've used the Rotobrush tool. And then after doing it, I frozen the result by clicking on the freeze button. Now, of course, it's important to choose the frame with the most details and then start from here. This is going to be your anchor point and define it as best as possible. You can use as many segments as needed. It's actually going to help After Effects if you're going to use more than just one segment to define what you want to keep and what you want to remove. So this is a straightforward process. I'm just going to double click on the second clip here and move over here to show you how this is looking. And then of course the third car, which is this one. So after freezing everything, we brought back the 3 cars. And now I'll show you the most tedious task, which was to isolate the traffic lights. So I'll enable this layer and I'll press I to go to the beginning of this layer. And then I'll zoom in by pressing the period key at least once. So you can see that I've used few masks. And this is because I wanted to keep all the information and animation of the countdown as well as changing the lights. So if I'll open up the masks, you can see that I've separated to few masks. So I isolated the left part, the pole itself, the hole in the pole, which I called pole R, and then the middle section and all the right components. This is much easier afterwards to animate if I need to move each one individually, even when it comes to rigid objects like that, which are hardly moving. Now, there are a couple of few tips and tricks that may help you when you are working with masks, especially with the pen tool inside After Effects. So the pen tool has a keyboard shortcut of the letter G. If I'll press the letter G and then G again, by default, this is going to switch between the regular pen tool and the feathered version. I'm going to hold on this tool to show you that we have options between the pen tool and the mask feather tool. And if you want to access those using the same keyboard shortcut, then you need to go to the After Effects preferences and under General, switch off this option. Pen tool shortcut toggles between pen and mask feather tools. So now when I'll press the letter G, each time I'm going to go to the next tool. And this can help you if you want to switch between different tools. However, the reason that this shortcut is switched off is because there are a couple of keyboard shortcuts using modifiers that you may want to memorize when working with masks. So I'm going to go back to the preferences, and although I told you to switch it off, I'm going to switch it on. However, I'll go to the 3D section and I'll take out the activate option, or if you're working on Windows, activate Alt with left, middle, and right mouse clicks to help you navigate the camera. Since we are not doing this number now, this is not a 3D project, I'm going to switch off this preferences option. Then I'll click OK, and then I'll zoom in even further by pressing on the period key, just so I can show you that if I'll select one of the anchor points and then I'll hold down the option key, instead of getting the temporary camera tool, I'll be switching my mouse to the convert vertex tool, which will allow me to switch from a corner or cast point to something smooth with handles. Now, I'm still holding down the Alt key, meaning that I now can control each one of the handles separately. Again, still holding the Option or Alt key, click again. It's going to convert it once again to a cast or corner point. And if the Alt or Option key is still pressed, I can use it quickly to access the Add Vertex tool if I need more points. Or if I want to remove an anchor point, of course, I can just select it and press the backspace or delete key. Now, After Effects is going to tell you that because we are animating stuff here, this is going to affect all the other points here. I'm going to say OK, and of course, undo the last modification. Another thing which I found very useful when I'm rotoscoping using masks inside After Effects is the ability to hold down Shift and then go outside whatever I want to select and marquee across those points to select only these points. And then with the cursor key, I can just move them up and down, left or right. And obviously I'm now changing everything that I did here. So I'll just undo a few times until I'll return to the previous state, which was this state. So here you go, couple of tips and tricks regarding rotoscoping and masks inside After Effects. I'm going to zoom out and show you how this is looking with the traffic light masked. And let's just play it from this point onward. So we can see that not only I masked it, I also, of course, if I'll press P, added 2 keyframes to make sure that it is leaving the frame. Easy ease on these keyframes, of course, this goes without saying. Now, before I'll show you how I created the flames and the dust and all the explosions, which were the easiest and the fun part of this project, I just want to linger on an idea that I borrowed from Stu Masowicz, and he's talking about it in his book, The DV Rebel's Guide. I'll put a link in the description. So he's saying that every time that you are doing something, add something of your own. He's referring to it as a kiss of love, something that is almost like your own signature. It doesn't really help the story. It's just a kiss of love. So I just want to show you my kiss of love. Maybe you already noticed it because it is appearing in the thumbnail of this video. But just in case you haven't, I'll just switch on the visibility of this layer, the black fill, as well as the rocket icon. And I'm just going to zoom in into the composition to show you what happens over here when the traffic light decided that it's leaving us. So instead of switching to the red indicator is now a rocket, giving us an indication that it's going to shoot out, or shoot up, I should say. Now, this is totally unnecessary for telling the story, and you probably won't notice it from this distance. But again, this is something that you may want to add as a little thing from you to yourself. All right, so all the other stuff from here onwards are things that I'm guessing you already know how to do. So I'm using few stock elements. Most of them you can find for free on the internet floor, such as this guy, the lighted sparkles. I've added it to the edge of the traffic light just to show you the original clip. I decided that this is going to contribute to the fire coming out of the traffic light. And then I'm using 2 instances of a clip that I got from the NASA website. They used to have free video clips. I think that these days they are not available anymore. But again, you can find those rocket launchers, missiles all over the place. So I'm just going to go back a little bit to show you that we have 2 instances, one on top of the other. to create the fire coming out of the edge of the traffic light. And then I have the huge flames, and I'm using it to create the illusion that we have smoke coming out of the engine, I guess, before it is shooting upwards. Now, this is actually quite interesting if I'll select one of them. I just want to show you that to remove the black pixels, instead of using a blending mode, notice that this is set to normal. In the effects and presets, if you're going to look for unmalt, there is on the image utilities a preset called alpha from lightness, parentheses unmalt. This is what I'm using over here, which is a combination of the shift channels and the remove color matting. So if I'll turn off the FX icon for the linear wipe and the tint, you can see the result of it. Now, by default, the take alpha from is set to luminance, and you need to play with it because sometimes different channels can give you different results. So I ended up landing on the red to just remove all the black pixels and stay with all the information from the original clip. So this is looking much more opaque than if I'm just going to set a screen or an add blending mode. On top of it, I've added the linear wipe just to create some softness, and I'm adding a tint with an amount of 90% to take away most of the red color and match it to the color of the street. So this is how I created those two bursts of fire or smoke. And then there are a couple of dust waves which are being duplicated all over the place just to add some dust. Again, I'll double click on it just to show you how this looks on its own. And finally, there's this free clip from Adobe Stock, which is a lot of smoke coming fast towards us. And this is the last element over here to fill the street with a lot of smoke. And then the cars are passing by as if nothing has happened. All right, before I'll show you the final composition, I'll click on the shy icon here, and this is going to expose the audio layers. This is the countdown that you heard, and this is a separated clip that I recorded from a different traffic light. I'll double click on it just to show you. I'm really close over here, recording the speaker with the countdown. On top of it, I've added original sounds from a real missile launch. This is the same clip that I showed you before. I'll switch on the speaker for it, and then few sound effects with big explosion and distractions. So everything combined together is going to yield the sound result that you heard at the beginning, and you will hear in a moment again. Now, before we'll go to the final composition, this is everything combined together. So I've placed this composition, everything that you're seeing here inside this one. I scaled it a touch. If I press S, you can see 105. So we are hiding the problematic edges that we've seen before. And then I added a simple color correction using an adjustment layer. And by simple, I mean just the Lumetri color effect. And if I'll open the creative section, I'll show you that I've chosen a lookup table. This is the SL Blue Moon, and I set the intensity to 50%. So this is without the color correction, and this is with. And finally, at the beginning, I added the title of the movie. And that's it. Now we can maximize it, and we can see it again.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And so this is it for this tutorial. I hope those techniques, preferences, tweaks, and obscure effects will help you to create better, cohesive compositions in After Effects. Please leave a comment if you like to see more breakdown tutorials like this one, or if you have any tips of your own that worth sharing. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.